I won you over.
Well, I'm not going to say that, at least not right now, but maybe at the end I will. Okay. I will admit to being, I won't say the word wrong because that's obviously never correct, but
Wow, wow, I got that wow, wow. Anything that I want, I'ma get it now. Yeah, wow, wow.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Clickworthy Convos. I'm MD Klein here with my co-host Mo Connors, and we are getting into a great debate over user journey mapping, what it is, and if it's valuable, and how you would use it. We were literally in the middle of this debate, so we figured we'll let you all hear it and let you all in on it and pick a side. Or maybe you have your own side.
yeah, maybe there's somewhere in between. There were definitely some hot takes when we were talking about this. So user journey mapping to me really sparks like an image of process flows, right? And 45 variations of the same journey, and how it's a great exercise to do one time, right? But like the effort to keep up your user journeys based on the pace of change, like, I am opposed to user journey mapping in that form, which I think is a somewhat unpopular opinion, especially in the CX world.
I agree with you. I mean, I definitely think that that's a lot of work and a lot of details that people probably wouldn't appreciate to the extent of the amount of effort that's put into it. But I see user journey mapping as understanding where your acquisition channels are, how your customers are getting to your website or your experience, understanding your different segments and how those layer in, the different types of communications and communication channels. And it's probably something that I could write on a napkin. But I think the most important piece of that is just understanding what happens before and after an interaction. I think there's a lot of times where teams are just focused on their specific area, whether it's the authorized user part of the experience and they're just focused on the dashboard and the account part of the experience, or existing customer versus acquisition or lead generation. If you don't think about what's coming before or after an instance, if you just stop thinking there, I think it does more harm than good. Having a broad understanding, even if it's simple, of what that kind of looks like can be super valuable.
So I agree. I think there's value in understanding the journey at a high level, right? And understanding the experiences that your customers may have. I think the question that I have is, does it have to be in a detailed map? And, are you mapping out every single thing? I have been through painful, I'm not sure if I said painful experiences where, these user journey mapping teams have said to me, send me all of your emails that you send me all of your SMSs, send me all of your direct mails, right? And then they put all of these things up on a board and it's like, these are all the ways that customers come in. Like, I think that there's a way that you can do user journey mapping and level it up, right? And that I think is beneficial. And hopefully that's where you're trying to get to, but spending hours and hours and hours auditing and hundreds of pieces of marketing, like marketing changes so quickly, headlines, CTAs, whatever it is, right? Like it changes so quickly that I just don't think it's realistic that you can keep a user journey map up to date to the level of specificity that people might want to.
I see it as almost like a plug and play versus auditing every piece of direct mail or all your emails. Like, that's not valuable to me. But as I'm crafting a strategy, having an understanding of all of the acquisition channels, all of the segments, what the flow looks like, but it's not getting into the weeds and the nitty gritty because then it's too much. I can't look at it. I don't really take anything from that, but I think it's valuable and important to think about what is happening before and after an interaction and not just instance specific.
I think that makes sense. And one of the things that I think about customers opt out of different things or fail to opt in, right? Like SMS, generally you need customers to give express consent for you to give them an SMS. So even if SMS is your channel, it's probably a small subset of your customers who have opted into SMS, right? Because you've had customers who've been there a long time, like before SMS was as popular a channel as it is today, right? So you may have customers who are in the DM email space and not in SMS yet. It's not necessarily about understanding the, I'm going to call it like the checks and balances of I'm opted into DM, email, SMS, but it's understanding like, regardless of these acquisition channels, your messaging experience and how you're entering into the next phase of the user journey needs to be consistent.
That is exactly it. I just want a point of reference to be able to intentionally craft a strategy that's consistent and guides people through that journey versus looking at every nuance of every piece of email, DM, social. I think that's too much, and I don't see the value in it. And again, it could be a controversial opinion, but I think what's more important is understanding the user journey to be able to craft an experience that's seamless and that gets customers ultimately to convert.
I like the idea of, you take the user journey and you sort of map out the most common path, right? Here's your messaging for awareness, right? Like here's the messaging that you have for awareness. If anything is for awareness, this is what you have. This is like more of your hard-hitting channel messages, right? Your direct mails, your emails, everything else comes in the next layer. When they get to your website, here's sort of the experience, and then you kind of follow it through. And I think to some degree you can spider out from there, right? Customers are going to have different problems, but you only need to spend the time mapping out the most common problems and then how does it impact back into the journey. You could literally get into analysis paralysis in all the versions of a user journey that you could come up with. I don't think that that's a valuable exercise. I think there's a lot of companies out there who make this their job, and a lot of companies hire a lot of FTE to do it. They spend a lot of time and energy looking in the journey. If it's not affecting big enough portion of your customer base, like we can't solve for the 1%, and you shouldn't be spending your time solving for the 1%.
You have to think about, why are you doing this? What is it going to do for you, and how is it going to give you valuable information? Is it going to give you valuable information? I can tell you right now, a big, extensive, robust journey map would not be helpful for me. Something simple and an understanding of the most common path plus how it breaks down into segments outside of, just lead generation and acquiring customers, like what happens with retention, and just having a basic understanding of what that looks like can help think through how you're showing up as a brand consistently. Are you being consistent throughout the end-to-end journey? Are you just thinking about acquisition or retention? Like each piece of that is critical. It's business 101 that retaining a customer is easier than acquiring a new one, and cheaper, more cost effective. So you want to make sure that your experience across the board is polished. And the only way to really do that effectively is understanding the end-to-end journey.
100%. So now I'm going to speak out of both sides of my mouth, because I think that there's two use cases I can think of when it's valuable to map the user journey. I think one of them.
Map the user journey extensively, or outline a simplified...
I'm going to say outline a simplified version of it.
Okay.
One of those cases is where you're stepping outside of your BAU. So I think about that as you're doing a limited time offer, or you're doing something that is different, and then you need to make changes across the user journey in order to be able to reinforce your messages, right? You need to audit then, where are all the places where we want to talk about our limited time offer? Where are all the places, if the customer's taking advantage of a limited time offer, are they going to kind of come in and they need to see this messaging? It's a portion of the journey that you're mapping out. But I think at a high level, you want to make sure that you get all the touch points right.
Yes.
So that you can update the messaging and be consistent.
Yes. And understand where you need to show up, right? So I think if you don't have that and you're only thinking about the ad campaign that's omni-channel, you may have a miss on the logged in or member account side if there's a placement for a banner ad or another offer or something along those lines. So it sounds like I'm getting you to buy into the idea of a very simple understanding of the journey and touch points.
Yes. So I would concede that. I have PTSD from a previous life of how detailed we would have to map out journeys. I think like a high level understanding of your user journey is important. I think one of the other things where it is good to go into detail is when you're seeing customer complaints and customers are complaining repeatedly. You see complaints about a particular aspect of your experience. That's when it's good to kind of dig in and try to understand. And I'm not saying you're mapping it out to the nth degree where you've got 157 variations on the same user journey, but understanding, it kind of goes back to like, where are those pain points? Where are you falling down and meeting your customers' expectations? Like that type of journey mapping is really important because it does help you then, create a roadmap of what you need to fix to either reduce the complaints or fix the issue that's causing complaints.
I think it really boils down to making sure that you're spending time crafting something intentional that's useful to you and your teams. And it's not just the full audit of everything that isn't going to add value to anyone. You're doing something for the sake of just doing it, and it's not going to be helpful or relevant unless you have time to dig into something like that, which I don't know anybody who does. I certainly couldn't, and that's why I want it on a napkin. But it's just that reference and cheat sheet to be able to ground yourself, and you're not just coming out of thin air like, oh, this is a good idea. It's rooted in some type of thoughtful strategy of, hey, here's how this journey connects. What would make the most sense? What channels should we activate? Where should we put these placements and these messages to be the most effective?
So maybe what I can get behind, if I reframe your question slightly,
this is Maureen coming around. This is me winning it. This is one of my favorite experiences. It doesn't happen often.
You're changing my mind. That's very true. I'm extremely stubborn and set in my ways.
I'm gonna make you say it at the end of this.
Old marketing lady. I'll say it right now. I think what I'm coming around to is it's almost user journey mapping with a purpose. You know what I mean? Like you're starting out by saying like, what's the problem that we're trying to solve that we're going to then go back and map out the journey, right? So if we're trying to solve, is our messaging consistent? That is a question you want to answer. And then you map out the journey that shows whether or not your messaging is consistent. That is useful to me because I think then you can literally find where your messages are incomplete. We've got customer complaints on this problem. We're going back out and we're mapping that journey on all of the failures so that we know where we need to solve for this, right? Customers are dropping off in our funnel. Let's map the funnel. Let's look at it so that we can then pinpoint where there's error. Like I think user journey mapping with a purpose or an endpoint or a goal in mind is really good. Just saying, hey, we want to understand our end-to-end user journey and let's go ahead and just map that without a problem you're trying to solve, to me is a waste of effort.
I agree with that. And I think that the strategic piece of it that you were speaking to, the problem solving and almost being proactive when you're thinking about new campaigns or things that are upcoming, new ways to activate, it helps you do that more intentionally versus just shooting in the dark. You can think of, if people are falling off here in the funnel, what supplementary information could we give them? What channels do we have? How could we communicate or send them additional tools? I guess what I'm trying to say is like you can just craft your strategy much more intentionally when you have an understanding of the players, I guess, on the field, if you want to use a sports analogy, and how they all work together.
I love a good sports analogy. So I think that user journey mapping has its place in marketing, in business. I do agree with that. But I think it has to be intentional and with a purpose, like just what you said. So I am not a fan of user journey mapping in general. the end to end without purpose. Now, if it is based on a problem, on a hypothesis, on something we're trying to solve, then I think it can be worth the effort. What I don't think companies should do and what I don't recommend is having, a user journey mapping team that is literally spending day in and day out, keeping track of your journey, showing how things change. Like, I don't believe that there's a ton of benefit in that.
No, I would totally agree with that. And I don't even know if people would call what I am speaking to an actual user journey because it's so high level and simplified and rough. But I think that there's value in that. If you're only thinking about your specific instance or your specific channel, there are so many ways that things could go wrong and fall off and create this disconnected experience. I remember the CMO told me once UX in the website is the most disconnected from all of our other marketing in all the ways, visually, messaging, the whole nine. And that's our storefront, like really. So he's like, I want you to connect those things. So you have to think about everything because otherwise you have problems like that. And that's where I see the value of understanding the big picture.
So I will agree. I've come around to user journey mapping with purpose. Have you come around to the fact that there is user journey mapping that is absolutely unnecessary?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I came into this debate with the perspective that that type of user journey is a total waste of time, not valuable. I'm sure there's a lot of people that would argue with me. And I guess I would challenge where they see the value to understand how that's time well spent. Like what are you using it for? What are you taking away from it? Having people constantly maintain that, like I just did with you. Sell me on the value. And if you can do that, I'm open to it. Like I'm always open to thoughts, but I just don't see it at this moment in time. Could I be proven wrong? I mean, that would never happen for you, but it could happen for me. So I would be open to a conversation with anyone who thinks that a full user journey map like that is valuable. Because right now I'm not seeing it. Never know.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, listen, I've walked into companies and I've seen an entire wall that is a user journey map, right?
And did you walk out the door?
It's
Because
something
I
that
would
is-
have.
I did not because they were clients. So I had to be, oh, this is a lovely user journey map. Will really help me understand what's happening. And it is helpful to understand their process, right? But I'm not sure like the juice is worth the squeeze in maintaining and updating that unless you have a problem that you're trying to solve, a consistency issue, or something else that spending time keeping that updated, maintaining that is helping you solve. I actually think if you're looking at this journey, it can stifle innovation as well because you've got this journey up there and you're just looking at it day in and day out. I think you become, what do they call it? Like nose blind when you can't smell that your house smells like your wet dog, right? Like you can't really see the solution or you can't really see the problems anymore because you're looking at the same thing day in and day out. So I like the idea of, coming out fresh sometimes when you have a problem, mapping something to your problem or asking yourself and then validating it. I have like an immediate reaction when I have a consultant come in and just say like, we're going to map this out. We're going to throw everything up on a board. And I basically am going to give you an audit request that you need to send me all of this documentation. Like I almost immediately want to walk out. I definitely delegate that assignment to someone else.
Hundo P, 10 out of 10, every single time. What I will say about the benefit of what I will call now like a cheat sheet, it's just the Spark Notes. I love my Spark Notes. It's what's going to help me at a quick glance reference the big picture and know how the decisions that I make could impact something before or after. Is it going to disrupt something in the flow? Is it a good thing? Where's my spaces for innovation? But I absolutely do not want to be operating in this mold. I've never been someone's square peg round hole. That's boring. But I do think making sure that you're thoughtful And you're not just like, oh, this is cool, this is a good idea, let me just go for it. You need to have an understanding of how it's going to affect other variables, how everything works together. And I think that's where, for me, the value comes in and the important pieces. Just thinking big picture and not just with your blinders on in your one lane.
I think if you have your high level journey in your big chunks, right? So, your awareness, your conversion, post conversion onboarding, retention, those type of things, right? If you have those mapped out and you've got your messaging aligned, you've got your potential experiences aligned, and people are playing within those guardrails that you've set, like, should have a very consistent experience. And then when customers have one-off shoots and problems, I think you solve them one-off.
I'm a big fan of winging it, kind of like this great debate that we got into today, but winging it with a little bit of context. You don't want to break something. You kind of want to understand the cause and effect and almost proactively solve problems down the line if you have that reference point as your North Star or grounding point. So I think that that framework is important to build, even if it's rough. Just don't spend a lot of time on it. That would be my only word of advice.
I love that. So what I will say is I think you've talked me around to I'm good with user journey mapping within reason. Within reason.
Or journey mapping
With a
MD
purpose.
style. Yes.
It's a hypothesis or something you're trying to solve for. I'm not a fan of user journey mapping for user journey mapping sake.
We can agree on that. So I'm glad that you could admit that I've won you over. That rarely happens. So this is a big win for me, y'all.
Perhaps I've given up or overcome some of my user journey mapping PTSD as a result of this conversation. So I just want to say thank you.
You know what? I'm here for you. I'm here for you anytime. We'd love to hear your thoughts. If you have opposing perspectives, you agree, you find value in journey mapping, or there's something totally different that you use that you find value in, let us know. Drop it in the comments. Go to marketingperspective.com, submit your great debate or your questions or your thoughts. As you've seen today, we can be open to other perspectives. And then make sure that you follow, like, subscribe on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, wherever you listen to or watch your podcasts. We will be back at it with another hot take next week.
Thank you.